So we've all heard that like Oblivion has some performance issues and stuff. We even saw them when we played it on stream on launch day when they shadow dropped it. There were some weird graphical artifacts. There were weird like stutters and stuff, but we didn't have time to really sink our teeth into it. And that's one of the benefits, frankly, of just shadow dropping your game is in many ways you bypass a lot of the critical evaluation that normally happens. When you give games out for review, like you're giving journalists and reviewers and tech analysts time to sink their teeth into it and to figure out what's working and perhaps more importantly, what's not working, and then to communicate that to everybody. But when you shadow drop, you don't have to do any of that. You get to just put it out there. People download it because they're excited. And by the time people realize it's got performance issues, it's kind of too late. They already bought it. They started playing it, you know, you're good to go. But one of the more interesting things is that, you know, with this Oblivion remaster, they've retained a lot of the soul of Oblivion, but also a lot of the bugs. A lot of the things that used to work with OG Oblivion, in fact, all of them, as far as I'm aware, still work here. And it's because they basically just took the creation engine, or I guess it was Gamebryo at that time, but they took that engine and they put it under the hood of the creation or of the Unreal Engine. And then they let the Unreal Engine look all pretty, and it's basically the shell of the car. It's all the pretty stuff. It handles presentation, but the engine inside is still creation / Gamebryo. It's still that game at its core. And that means that some of the fun bugs and stuff that you used to see in the original game are still there, you know, which some people find funny. And, you know, even down to like the dialogue being the same. That old like viral clip of the voice actress who said the line wrong and then asked to redo it and then said it again the right way. They kept the entire take with the mistake in it as well in the game, and it's still there even now. But it also means that some of the more severe problems of Oblivion remain. And if you don't know what used to happen, I found a post from 17 years ago that explains one of the problems that has also seemingly made its way into the Oblivion remaster. This is a post on Game FAQs, Game Facts, and this was from Faye420, 17 years ago. This was posted April 26th, 2008 at 8 a.m. and 30 seconds in the morning. Okay. So one of my buddies got a PS3 about a week ago and got COD 4 and Oblivion. And I have to say, I was amazed at how unsmooth Oblivion looked on the PS3. I got it on PC running at a consistent 60 frames. It makes the PS3 version look like a joke. My question is, why did the developers release a console game that didn't run smoothly? They could have turned down the graphics a bit. I was laughing like hell when he went into a heated battle at an Oblivion gate. It seriously looked about 15 to 25 frames per second, which in my opinion is unplayable. The multiple slowdowns he runs into affects how he does in the game. That creates problems. So has anyone else compared the graphics and performance in the two versions? And then throughout the rest of the forum posts, they start to analyze it and discuss it. But one of the things here, deleting the system data from the PS3 HDD, not your game saves, will make it run smoother too. Yes, that's a good idea. There's a bunch of little tidbits in here about it, but one of the interesting things about old Bethesda games is that they had a problem where the longer you played them, the worse they would run. And it was especially a problem on the PlayStation 3 side of things. This even affected Skyrim pretty badly on the PlayStation 3 in 2011. My understanding of what this is that basically it was a memory leak issue, and there was a problem with how the game juggled the data it was constantly dealing with, and so it just kind of shoved bits and pieces off in various places until eventually it clogged up the whole thing. And guess what's still in the game today? Also the amount of saves. Yeah, the amount of saves and the size of the save file would affect it. Yeah, there were a few things. But guess what's still there? Yeah. As reported by Digital Foundry, there's a problem that's still here. And what's crazy is that within just 15 minutes, you can see a significant drop in performance, which is insane. As kind of encapsulated here by Push Square from their 12-minute video or so. They do a little comparison where they freshly boot the game and then they compare it to a version of the same save file loaded that's been left running for 15 minutes. So in one instance, they load and look at the frame rates immediately. And then they reload, but let it run for 15 minutes and then check it. You know what they found? They experienced as much as a 15 FPS difference, which is 25%. Okay, because we're only talking about 60 frames. If we were talking about 240 frames, oh, we only dropped 15. Okay, not that big of a deal. Still bad, but not that bad. We're dropping a quarter, okay? That's insane. Digital Foundry experienced as much as a 15 FPS difference between the one that was new and the one that had been left running for just 15 minutes, where what it refers to as a charged playthrough was running around 45 FPS while a fresh boot was only at 59. The longer you leave your session running, also, the camera on horseback shifts to where you can hardly see your character or steed while running. Essentially, the outlet suggests resetting the game every 15 minutes or so to avoid these issues on the current build. The camera slowly zooms in when you're on horseback. If you hop on horseback, you ride for 30 seconds and, move on. It's not that noticeable. It's probably not that big of a deal. But if you leave yourself on horseback, it will eventually just make it so you can't see your character. But let's see. This is the exact example. Thank you again for the 10. That was very generous. Let's see.
Performance testing is where we face the game's most glaring problems. Before we kick off, it's worth stressing that console frame rates are affected by many factors, like the variable weather, dynamic time of day, NPC and enemy positions, and so on, all of which are out of our control for exact tests. Surprisingly, and on top of that, 60 FPS performance also degrades with continuous playtime on PS5 and Xbox. For example, a completely fresh boot of the game, that is, closing the software, reopening it, and loading a save for the first time, will give you an often significantly higher frame rate when compared to a playthrough that's been running for 15 minutes or more. Traveling between areas or cycling through multiple save states is an easy way to overload the engine and tank performance. This is true of all console platforms, where matching routes through the world can run at up to 20 frames per second better on PS5 Pro at points using the fresh boot. Likewise, Xbox Series X and base PS5 have the exact same behavior, with a freshly booted save giving consistently higher readings compared to a charged playthrough, with more continuous playtime behind it. Curiously, cycling through saves also introduces bugs in the charged playthrough, and so the Lumen GI setting appears to change, resulting in thicker shading across the scene at times, which may well explain the performance difference here. And secondly, you may have noticed, it also leads to the camera position being too high while riding on horseback.
Look how different it is, dude. If you ride your horse for too long, you just don't get to see your horse anymore. Look how much it's cropped, dude. That's unbelievable. I don't even know how that happens. Like, I guess they just have some like little bitty thing in there in the code that just says slowly zoom when you hop on the horse initially, and they just don't terminate that. Like, the camera hops on, maybe it zooms in a little bit on the player, and then you ride. But I guess they just don't turn it off, and it just keeps going slowly and slowly until 15 minutes later, you just don't get to see your horse anymore.
Where both of these issues are very fixable by simply resetting the game.
This reminds me of when we were talking about Starfield so much. And people were like, no, Luke, like, I think you're cherry picking stuff. Or like one person accused me of like modding Starfield to get it to glitch out. Like, you remember we did that video where we bought a bunch of their paid mods and quests and stuff, and the gun you get as a reward for one of the quests was broken. It was like a $6 or $7 quest, and it was just, you couldn't reload the gun. And it took months to fix. Like, you just couldn't reload the gun. That was the one reward for this $7 quest you bought. And somebody accused me of like modding into it to break it for the sake of the video to make it like funnier or something. Like, people go to that length to defend this type of stuff when you can't even make this up. Like, how would anybody even think to make up a bug as stupid as this, that the camera just slowly zooms in to the point where you can't see your player character or horse if you happen to ride too long? That's insane. It's so stupid. But like, this is why also hand waving stuff away doesn't fix anything. It doesn't help. Okay. The longer you like simp for this and the longer you make excuses for it, it's just going to stay like this. Okay. The core problem for BGS, who I know some people are going to flip it and be like, oh, well, this was Virtuos. A week ago, they were saying it was BGS, okay? Like, you can't have it both ways. Either BGS was heavily involved in this, which they claim to have been. They put that all over their social media, or they weren't. And if they were heavily involved, I think it does reflect, again, one of the problems people like me have had with BGS for years and years and years, which is that their standard for quality, the point at which they say this is good enough, is so shockingly low that it's freaking hilarious at times. Like this, you know, the fact that this makes it out the door is insane. We're at a point where Ubisoft just put out a way more polished product than BGS. I mean, just a handful of years ago, that would have been shocking, but like that's what's happening now. That's just what's happening now. I can't fathom why people would start to make excuses and try to justify it. Be like, oh, well, bugs happen in every game. Bro, if you play it for 15 minutes, it breaks. You lose a quarter of your frames and you can't see your horse. Like, you can't make this up, man. It's crazy. Just reboot the game. It's fine, Luke. Just go back to the main menu every 15 minutes, close the game, reopen it, log back in, play for about 15 minutes, and then do the same thing over. You're just being whiny. Okay, you got me there. I guess if that's the standard. I really don't think... I find it more immersive to load in because the main menu is so cool. So I'm actually glad it works this way. Oh, man. Unbelievable.
All of this does suggest a memory management issue. On hindsight,
Classic.
A correction is due then for my previous console coverage, where I concluded that the hotfix improved Series X's 60 FPS performance. On retesting though, it's become clear that the hotfix run only actually benefited from what we've just seen. A fresh boot up of a ready-made save, while the previous test had more continuous playtime behind it. Ultimately, the issue of poor frame rates remains with or without the latest hotfix update on PS5 or Series X, and your continuous playtime is the bigger factor in how the game performs. Supporting the theory that this is a memory management issue or a memory leak is that all consoles crash after a while. After booting the exact same sequence of save points in a row, PS5 and PS5 Pro always freeze at a matching point, taking you to the console front end. On Xbox, we have the exact same issue after loading a save, where it bluntly ends the process and takes us to the Xbox menu. Tellingly, reloading that problem save point will suddenly work after a fresh boot up. In summary then, crashes may not affect everybody, but this does suggest that time and engagement with the game increases the likelihood of it happening.
Jeez, dude. And again, to be clear, we're not talking about this saying that this is going to be a problem with like Elder Scrolls 6. That's not what we're saying, because this is a problem going back, as I showed you in that post. People had problems with Oblivion performance going back to 2007, 2008, I mean, back to launch, effectively. It's always been a problem. I think there's some interview where Todd talked about it as well. I couldn't remember which one it was, so I wasn't able to find it. But there was an interview where he mentioned this memory leak issue. So they were aware of it. It's been a known thing for a while. And of course they dealt with it. And with Starfield, you can have 1,000 save files and like, it's not a problem. But the reason why we bring it up is because this type of, there's some problem within BGS and their projects when it comes to QA, when it comes to quality assurance, deciding when something is good enough and when something is not ready for launch. They were willing to put broken quests out. They were willing to put out paid mods which had rewards that were guns you couldn't reload. They were willing to put out all sorts of other crap that wasn't ready for prime time. And then with this, like, it's happening again. And we could point to BGS and be like, oh, well, it's actually more Virtuos in this case. They did the patch that broke some stuff, and so it's them. My point of view is if you put your company name on it and you frame it as like one of your projects, which BGS very clearly did, all of the marketing is focused on BGS, is focused on Todd. They mention Virtuos, but like, yeah, like all of this marketing. Journey through Cyrodiil, the Elder Scrolls Online podcast. If we go to these recent ones, you can see that they did this Oblivion Remastered Then and Now thing we watched on stream, which was cool. I mean, I appreciate that they recut this documentary that we've also looked at on stream. But they're framing it as their project, even if Virtuos is working on it too. They're framing it as theirs. So that means you also get the blame when things go crappy and when you break it and cause 25% of the frames to go away if you play for 15 minutes. Okay? You don't get to like be responsible when it's fun and then shirk responsibility when it's not, you know? So anyway, we'll see how the cookie crumbles with all this. But again, my one big push for BGS, whoever's in charge of your QA, I'm sure they're very nice people. I'm sure they're fun. I'm sure they have great personalities, but for the love of God, no other company has had such consistent issues with quality assurance to customers. And again, whether you believe that it is a problem or not, the perception is that it's laughably bad. So you got to deal with it. I think with Starfield, they did great because they had Microsoft engineers helping them, and that worked. Starfield was actually quite polished by Bethesda standards. It was quite polished, and I'll give them that. But after Microsoft took their engineers back, the same old stuff started happening again. Even now, like, I don't think they ever fixed the next-gen update for Fallout 4. I don't think they ever fixed a bunch of those quests and broken things in Starfield. There's still a bunch of those exploits in the game. Like, there's just a ton of stuff that they've never gone back to fix because they don't seemingly care. Yeah, I want to reload my guns. Can you fix that, please? So whatever you do, you got to get on top of the QA stuff, because until you do that, the confidence level in the studio is going to be very, very low. It just will be. And you can get away with it to a certain extent being on Game Pass, because with Game Pass, people are always just going to be like, well, I'll try it. And if it sucks, like, I don't feel like I lost too much. But especially if you're launching like day and date on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 6, whatever they end up doing for Elder Scrolls 6, like when those people are being asked to pay $80, because Microsoft has said they're going to go to 80 for some AAA stuff, those people are going to be asked to pay $80 for these games. And if your stuff is constantly broken, that becomes a much tougher sell. So I would just, again, really, really encourage you guys to try. That's just me. Until next time. In a day, when we talk about Starfield next, I'm sure. Buckle up, guys. He took my thing.